Well, good morning. Today is February the 18th, 2001, and I am proud to be here in Paris, France, at the Père Lachaise Cemetery at the grave of the great Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, the father of homeopathic medicine. Dr. Hahnemann has an interesting history, as you well know. He was born in Germany and practiced there for many years. When he was 80 years old, a 29-year-old woman from Paris by the name of Melanie got sick here in Paris and went to the doctors, and the doctors could not help her except by doing bloodletting and purging and all of the ways they practiced back in 1833. Well, she swore she would rather die, and she went home and went to her books. She went to the library and did some reading and discovered that Dr. Hahnemann was practicing by the use of very dilute medicines, which he called homeopathic. She said, "That's the doctor I want to go see," and she disguised herself as a man because it was unsafe for women to travel alone in those days, and she traveled 14 days by stagecoach and went to Germany to meet Dr. Hahnemann. He saw her on a one-day wait. He was still practicing. His wife had passed away. 4 of his 8 children had passed away, and he was still practicing homeopathic medicine. Well, he saw her, fixed her in one day with some drops under her tongue, and 3 days later they were married. She convinced him to move to Paris, where her father was a very wealthy man, and he moved here and set himself up in practice, and for the next 9 years became one of the most successful doctors ever to practice in Europe. He finally died at the age of 89 after being involved in an accident. He didn't die from an illness. He probably would have lived longer. The moral to the story is that don't give up. You can still make it in your 80s. Well, Dr. Hahnemann had a student. The student's name was Dr. Constantine Hering. Dr. Hering traveled to the United States of America and became one of the first homeopaths to practice in the United States. He lived outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and made a very, very important discovery that is still known and used today because, in fact, it's true. He discovered Hering's laws of cure. When you take a homeopathic remedy, you end up curing your symptoms from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, from the inside of your body to the outside of your body, and in reverse order that the symptoms originally occur. That means that let's say you have a headache and you take the right remedy for a headache. Well, the headache goes away and you say, "Wow, the doctor fixed my headache." But the next thing that happens is something lower, like a cough. And then the cough goes away, you might get a stomach ache. And by the time your big toe is hurting, in about 2 months, your headache is really ready to leave you. And I tell you this because you need to know that these clearing reactions are going to occur. The second part is inside to outside. Let's say you get a cough, the cough clears up, you could break out in a rash in your chest. Things leave you downwardly and outwardly. And the last thing that happens is reverse order. You're running an internal tape recorder of life events, and when you take the right homeopathic remedy, you end up pushing a button to go into instant replay, and you end up reliving symptoms usually by dreaming about them. People have very vivid dreams. Let's look at this monument that's here, and it'd be nice if we could get a close-up of it without falling down and eating some arnica, which would be a homeopathic remedy. But these are some of the books that Dr. Hahnemann wrote. The most famous of which is the Organon of Medicine, which is still being used, the Maladies Chroniques, the Fragmented, the Viribus Medicorum Positivus. It's really interesting how well kept this grave is. Looks like someone recently repainted it with gold lettering. And over here is some of the famous extracts from the Organon. Similia similibus curentur. Likes cures likes. It's his most famous saying. It's just a pleasure being here. Perhaps you can pan the camera up and get the very top of the monument. It's just a pleasure being here next to Samuel Hahnemann, and we'll be talking about some of this further. Now, this famous cemetery is interesting also. We're going to take a little trip to see some of the other people who are buried here, the most famous of which for Americans is Jim Morrison, who's buried down that way. So it's a pleasure being here with you today, and we'll talk some more.
There he is, James Morrison.
Good morning. It's a definite pleasure being here today in the Père Lachaise Cemetery, even though we're surrounded by some of the most famous dead people in the world. It's an educational experience to be standing here, and we're now on the way to Germany to see Dr. Hahnemann's home. See you there. I've done some real interesting things in my medical career, and this one is one of the highlights. I am standing here in the cold of Cothen, Germany. Today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2001. I am here with my good friend, you come in the picture, Uwe. Uwe Krebs. Yes. Uwe Krebs is the local heel representative for this part of Germany, and he has graciously taken me on this hunt to find this old building where Dr. Samuel Hahnemann lived from 1821 to 1835. Now, as you know, Dr. Hahnemann was practicing here for 14 years, and a 29-year-old woman by the name of Melanie came here from Paris to get treated, and he fixed her in one day, and 3 days later they were married. And then Dr. Hahnemann went with Melanie back to Paris, where he became famous, and we saw his grave the other day at the Père Lachaise Cemetery. Now, what I'd like to do briefly here before we get out of this cold weather is to talk briefly about the explanation of homeopathy. As you know, small amounts fix what large amounts cause. And for instance, if you were peeling an onion, your eyes would water. So you would juice the onion, take a dilution of the onion juice, and a couple drops under your tongue, your eyes would stop watering. Now, by Dr. Hahnemann's famous discovery, the law of similars, you could also use diluted onion juice to fix watering eyes in people who were not peeling onions, because diluted onions are similar to a whole bunch of things in the world that also cause watering eyes. And the study of homeopathy is the study of the things that are similar to other things. Like, in addition to onions and diluted onion juice for watering eyes, diluted poison ivy fixes arthritis, root tox. Diluted sulfur will take heat out of your body. And the discovery of those relationships are what made Dr. Hahnemann famous, and what is so good about the medicine, because there's no side effects. Now, from here, I am on the way to Baden-Baden, Germany, where I'm going to be attending a medical conference for the HEAL company, H-E-E-L, which Uwe works for here and I work for in the United States, where the famous Dr. Reckel, unbelievable traffic on the street, where the famous Dr. Reckowig discovered that by putting remedies together in combinations, the study and field of homotoxicology was founded. And I'll be talking to you more about this later. In fact, I was going to stand here for a half hour and do my whole speech, but I've decided to do it in the studio and just do this one on location. So, Uwe, it's a pleasure having you take me here. I appreciate it. Say hello to the people in the United States.
Hello, and greetings from Germany.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, if you would go turn us off, I'll say goodbye, and we'll be on the road to the airport to get to Frankfurt. Get back to the car, but we found a monument to Dr. Hahnemann. I take a picture of his name. You see, we're right here in Cothen in the middle of a very wintry day, and then up over there is another monument to him, and Dr. Lutz. Who was Dr. Lutz?
He was also people who works with homeopathy here in Cothen.
Goodness, okay. And who's the lady in the middle? It says Similia Similimus Curentor, which means like cures like.
Yes, that could be, yes.
But who's the lady?
I don't know.
It's just a monument to her here in this great town of Cothen. And I enjoy being here. I'm freezing to death. I'm in my winter coat. But I'm on the way back to Arizona and to bring the good word to our good friends here in the United States. Thanks. I am standing in front of the Cure House, and behind me is the casino. We actually had our meetings in this building, and it was an exciting 3 days of learning about homotoxicology. Homotoxicology is the bridge between allopathic medicine and homeopathic medicine that was developed by Dr. Hans Heinrich Reckewig. He ended up building a big company, which is down the road a bit. I'm standing here right now because it's cold. It snowed, as you can see, and I don't really have a car to get down to the plant. Hopefully tomorrow I can show it to you on the way out. But we've learned a lot, and standing here is just as exciting as standing by the plant. We learned the new techniques in the new 6-phase table, where you not only treat the organ system that's having the problem, but you recognize that the body tries to bury symptoms by getting it away from the superficial layers and taking it to the internal layers in order to get it away from being a problem. The problem is that as it goes deeper and deeper, it creates a bigger problem. For instance, if someone gets a runny nose, the body doesn't like that, say due to chronic allergies, and it tries to excrete the problem. You go through an excretion phase, but that doesn't work, and it goes a little bit deeper into the mucosal lining of the nose, and you end up getting an inflammation and a fever. And we learned that fever is the body's attempt to dissolve the toxin. You know, as you make something hotter, you can dissolve it better. But the inflammation phase becomes a problem, and you end up in what's known as a deposition phase. And the deposition phase is where you grow nasal polyps, and you start to get something deeper down into the respiratory tract, and you cross what's known as the biological divide, and you get into a degeneration situation where you actually can develop asthma. And then it buries into a deeper layer, and you end up breaking the walls between the alveoli, and you get emphysema, and ultimately you bury it so deep that you get a cancer. Now, the study and use of homotoxicology is allowing the body to have the energy to bring the layers back to the surface, almost like Herring's law. Symptoms leave you from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, from the inside to the outside, and in reverse order. Well, when you do homotoxicology appropriately, you bring these problems from the deeper layers back to the more superficial layers, where you can use your other remedies in order to treat them more specifically. Now, once you go from across the biological divide, you usually end up with cell damage, so that you never get a complete cure. You end up with scarring. But in the more superficial layers, the excretion, inflammation, deposition phases, you actually can get a complete cure. In other words, a nasal polyp really doesn't require surgery if you can deal with the patient appropriately by first balancing their terrain, getting the minerals right, getting the oxygen levels right, getting the acid-base levels right, and then using the appropriate homotoxicology remedies. We've really learned a lot on this trip, and we're looking forward to talking to you further. Well, I've moved the camera just a little bit, still with the hills in the backdrop of the beautiful city of Baden-Baden, Germany. What I'd like to talk about now is what we do when we do electrodermal testing. As you know, the Best MSA system is a very amazing device. very first what we do is we figure out the patient's main homeopathic constitutional remedy, and then what we do is to come in, to use the machine, to pick the one that balances the patient the best. And then we scan through the entirety of the computer program through the thousands of environmental remedies that can also be causing problems. Well, when we get to the end of the session, we might end up with 100, 150 different remedies, and we're left with the situation of how do you send the patient home with that many little bottles? It's very difficult to expect the patient to take over 100 bottles of homeopathic remedies. Well, the machine does some interesting things, as you're looking at in the office, where you can do imprinting. Through the use of the computer, you can actually combine groups of remedies and imprint them electromagnetically into bottles. So instead of having 100 bottles, you can get everything down to just 2 or 3 bottles and have the patient take one. Once we get the bottles chosen, once we get the remedies chosen, we're left with the question of having 100 to 150 remedies to send the patient home with, and that's kind of unwieldy. So we don't want to do that. What we do is we have the ability to imprint the remedies electromagnetically into separate carrier bottles, and we use basically the heal remedies to do that. And what we do is we can combine electromagnetically the remedies 20 and 30 at a time and imprint them electromagnetically into the bottles. Well, by doing this, we solve several problems. Number one, we only end up with 2, 3, maybe 4 bottles, each one taken on a separate day of the week. And then when the endpoints need to change, we have the ability to bring them back and put the bottles on the stage and re-imprint them with the new dilutions and the new frequencies, so that we don't have to throw the bottles away, and we have the ability to be efficient as far as bringing the bottles into a more reasonable number. Well, this sets up a problem. Because the bottles are electromagnetically imprinted, if you put these bottles near anything electromagnetic, you can erase the imprint. So you have to be very careful where these bottles go. Like, for instance, you can't put them on top of a microwave, on top of a television, on top of a computer. You can't walk through a metal detector with them. So you have to be careful. If you have to travel, you get a lead-lined film bag from a camera store and put the bottles inside the film bag and protect them in that manner. Now, the other things you have to worry about is what you put in your mouth. Now, it's a matter of some controversy, and we discussed it at the meeting here in Baden-Baden, but I still believe that mint erases. We actually had a discussion about mint. Some people say mint doesn't matter, but I feel it does. And you have to be very careful about toothpaste, mouthwash, candy, and anything else that contains mint. Camphor is no good. Raw onions and raw garlic are also a problem. Now, some people would ask the question, is the electromagnetic imprint of a remedy the same as the remedy? And the answer is it isn't. It's different. It's an electromagnetic imprint. But it raises what I've begun to call the Ella Fitzgerald question. Which is better, Ella Fitzgerald Live or Ella Fitzgerald on Memorex? With a good stereo system, you cannot tell the difference. So you just have to be careful and use the bottles appropriately and save the efficiency of not having to buy new bottles. Just want to show you that you can't get too far away from America, even here in the central square of Baden-Baden, Germany. We've had a great trip, and we look forward to getting back to the United States. We have a small part of it here, however, right behind us. And of course, we can't help but point out that, Sophie, this is your hotel. And Rachel, I've got your little alarm clock in my pocket, which has kept me from oversleeping every day that I've been here.